Kia ora te whānau, e ihu karate ko, Andrew Doubleday, aho. Today we're looking at the Gospel text for Sunday the 14th of June 2026. It's Matthew chapter 9 verses 35 through to 10 verse 8. So we pick it up. Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the labourers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out labourers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples, and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out, and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Philip and Bartholomew. Thomas and Matthew the tax collector. James, son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus. Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: "Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment." Now there's a fair amount in this passage that I'm not going to attempt to deal with today. What I want to focus on today is one word, just one word. But it's one word that has spoken deeply into my heart over the years, and it's one word that I hope that if you need it will transform your view of God forever. And it's the Greek word splanchnizomai. Now it's translated in this passage with the word compassion, and I'll read it to you again, verse 36 of chapter 9. When Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Now this word splanchnizomai is quite extreme. In the old King James Version, it's the bit where we get bowels of mercy, because the splanchnon was the deepest part of the person. And splanchnizomai has that sense of their insides turning over within them. It's a sense of being so deeply moved by something that it hits us at a deep and visceral level. I think one of the best translations that we see it, and we will come across it in a moment, his heart went out to them. It's that sense of wanting, just yearning to reach out, just yearning to touch and to heal and to make a difference. It's that deep and profound sense. Now, there are only 12 references in the New Testament to this word. But what we see is they describe only Jesus, and in the parables, the God image, really. So I'm just going to quickly go through all 12 ones. The first is the one which we have just read from chapter 9, verse 36. In chapter 14 of Matthew's Gospel, we read that when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion. His heart went out to them, and he healed their sick. In chapter 15, verse 32, Jesus called his disciples and said, "I have compassion. My heart goes out to these people. They've already been with me for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way." There's this deep yearning for wholeness and well-being for these people. We see in chapter 18, Jesus uses that same word in a parable. The first one we see in Matthew's Gospel is in the story of the unmerciful servant. You remember the story where the servant owes an unpayable debt and the master wants to collect. And he pleads with his master. He says, give me time and I'll pay you. And what we read is in verse 27 of chapter 18, the servant's master took pity on him. The servant's master splanchnizomai him. The servant's master, his heart went out to him. He cancelled the debt and let him go. Now, of course, if you remember the rest of the story, the tragedy is that the same level of grace wasn't extended by this servant to another servant who owed him a modest, paltry sum, really. Then we come to the story in Matthew 20, where Jesus is coming out of Jericho, and there's two blind men sitting at the side of the road, and they call out to Jesus. They appeal for help from him. It says Jesus had compassion on them. His heart goes out to them, and he touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. At the beginning, right in the first chapter of Mark's Gospel, we see a person with leprosy come to Jesus. He says, if you were willing, you can make me whole. And Jesus' response, it says, filled with compassion, Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. What a risky thing that would have seemed for many people to do. I am willing, he said. Be clean. And my sense of this is that, as I've traced a number of the healings through the Gospels, is that what Jesus does is he takes this man's leprosy into himself and deals with it that way. And this man is cleansed. In chapter 6, we see a repeat of our text for today. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them. His heart went out to them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. In Mark chapter 8, we have again a repeat of the same thing where they had 3 days and these people are hungry. My heart goes out to these people. I have compassion for these people. They've already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And then in Luke's Gospel, in chapter 7, we see that as Jesus, I'm trying to remember where it was, but as he's walking through the city, he sees a funeral procession. He sees this heartbroken woman as she walks behind the pallet, carrying her dead son. And here it says, when the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her. And he said, don't cry. And he touches the son and restores, heals, brings him back to life. His heart goes out to her. And then finally, both in Luke's Gospel, we have two of the most, I think, signal parables of the heart of the Father. And he tells the story that we know of as the parable of the Good Samaritan, how two religious leaders ignored this Jewish man who'd been left bleeding and dying at the side of the road. And then in chapter 10, verse 33, but a Samaritan, as he travelled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he had splanchnizomai for him. He took pity on him. Here was this man who would regard him as an enemy. His heart went out to him, and he did everything he could to make sure that this man not only survived but thrived. And finally, the parable we know as the parable of the prodigal son, where the son has been away, he finally comes to himself, he has spent everything, he has lost everything, but he goes home to his father because he says, well, surely I can get a job even as a slave in the household. So he got up in verse 20 of chapter Luke 15, and says, so he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him And I want to suggest to you that for days, maybe months, maybe a couple of years, the Father has every day been scanning the horizon, his heart yearning for the return of his Son, just wanting to see him come home. He knows that he will be sure that he's not in a good space. And so we read, while he was still a long way off, his Father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. His heart reaches out towards him. He ran to his Son, very undignified for a senior Jewish man to lift up the skirts of his garments, and runs down the road. He threw his arms around him and kissed him. This reflects the yearning, the heart of God. And so we come back to our passage. When he saw the crowds, Jesus had compassion on them. His heart went out to them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. What did Jesus see? I want to suggest he saw people just like us. But he sees them, he saw them as they really are. He saw them without the masks, without the barriers, without the facades that we put up. He saw into the very core of each one. And he saw that quiet desperation that so often fills so many of us so much of the time. Harassed and helpless, not knowing who they were or where they were going, like sheep without a shepherd. This is the core of Jesus' heart. This is who Jesus is. We want to understand the gospel, we need to understand this, because this is who God is. That, as John later puts it, the aging John, God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. And also we discover that this is the mission of the church. It's not about getting bums on seats. It's not about getting a whole lot of people to sign up to our way of seeing. It's not even about seeking to make sure that people go to heaven when they die. But it's about meeting people where they are, here and now, in their lostness, in their confusion, in their pain. And so here's Jesus, driven by compassion, splanchnizomai. And it's the same today, that he sees us that we might have strength to face today, that we might have hope to face tomorrow, that we might experience a confidence that we're not alone, but that we're deeply and profoundly loved by God. And what we're invited to understand is that Jesus' love, Jesus' compassion, Jesus' commitment to us reflects the Father's love, the Father's compassion, the Father's commitment to us, to all of us. This is the basis for any evangelism that is going to make any difference. I want us to notice what he says to the disciples. The harvest is plentiful, but the labourers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out labourers into the harvest field. This turns the whole concept of harvest on its head. Harvest, in our way of thinking, is when the fruitfulness has come to full turn. The crops are laden, they're heavy. And it's about bringing in the full, mature richness of the crops. The harvest for Jesus is the opposite. The fields are white and ripe for harvest when they're barren, when they have nothing to give, nothing except their lostness, their emptiness, nothing except their desperation and their hopelessness. It's when the hour is darkest, when the circumstances are bleakest, when no way forward can be seen. It's then that Jesus responds out of splanchnizomai. It's then that new beginnings become possible, when transformation is just around the corner. He sees this hunger, this yearning, this sign of longing, longing to be loved, longing to be accepted, longing to know that we're okay, and our longing for God. And Jesus invites his disciples to see people the way he sees them, to see them through the eyes of love, not through the eyes of judgment or of fear, and to pray to God for people of deep compassion to respond to the needs that they now see around them, who see because they see through Jesus' eyes. Interestingly, after this prayer we have a chapter break, which is not terribly helpful, because as the next chapter opens, the prayer is answered, and the people who are sent out are the people who have done the praying. It's the 12. They become the answer to their own prayers. They're the ones who are sent out in the Spirit of Jesus with that same aching, breaking heart. They're the ones who are sent out to reach out as Jesus has demonstrated to them repeatedly, with that same splanchnizomai, heart going out to others, compassion, yearning to see people healed, to see people renewed, to see people given hope for new beginnings. And it starts with the one who was right in front of me, right here and right now. Amen. God bless you.